and welcome back. You're watching World Talks, and I'm your host, Kavya Czerwinska. After a recent Russian drone incursion into Poland, Russian fighter jets violating Estonian airspace, and a new drone launch site established within striking distance from Poland, the safety and security of NATO's eastern flank is on everyone's lips here in Europe. Rostyslav Khotin, a senior Ukraine editor from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, joins me to investigate what's behind these Russian provocations. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me here on the program.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Pleasure as always. So, let's start from the top. We've heard from Czech President Petr Pavel, backed by Lithuanian Defense Minister Dovile Sakalienes, suggesting that Russian jets breaching alliance borders should be shot down. Are we shooting down the Russian jets or not? What's your opinion on this?
Czech President Petr Pavel said that he is actually the former NATO general. He was the head of the NATO military committee, the most powerful military position within NATO alliance he held for several years. So he's suggesting that it would be wise for NATO to deter Russia by shooting down air jets when they enter the airspace of NATO countries, like Estonia on Friday. So he's a man of military knowledge. He's a man of courage and bravery. He knows what he is saying. His stance was supported by some other officials from NATO Eastern flank countries. Of course, Petr Pavel is saying that he says that it will provoke Russia to kind of bring temperature very high up to the high level between the NATO alliance and Russia. If NATO is indeed to shoot Russian air jets. But nevertheless, it will deter Russia from entering airspace because it's a dangerous provocation. You know, Russian jets entered Estonian airspace and stayed three, not just one, a single, like a mistake or no, three. It was a deliberate provocation. 3 air jets, MiG-31, entered Estonian airspace and stayed there for 12 minutes. 12 minutes! It's quite a long time for such things. It's not just a minute or 2 minutes. It's 12 minutes, a deliberate provocation, and it's quite a long time.
One could be a mistake, 3 already makes a crowd. So considering that violation of the Estonian airspace, do you think that the eastern flank should actually be concerned about a possible attack? Where are we on the timeline when it comes to what could potentially happen next?
I won't go that far to suggest that Russia is preparing an attack against NATO eastern flank countries. No. Putin simply is testing NATO abilities. Putin is testing NATO determination. Putin is testing NATO technical kind of coordination, the willingness to sustain the unavailability of its airspace. Putin is testing the NATO reaction, how the NATO will react. So it's important that Estonia has asked for activation of Article 4 of NATO treaty, which is about Article 4. It's about consultation between NATO members. Is one NATO member is threatened or feels threatened by someone else. So Poland also tried to activate the Article 4. After Russian incursion on the 10th of September. Now Estonia is activating Article 4, so NATO North Atlantic Council will hold a session at NATO headquarters next week, actually this week, to discuss those things and after activation of Article 4 of NATO Treaty.
Mm-hmm. So you said that this is a test for the alliance, a test that is being issued by Russia. So how would you say is the alliance doing? Is the alliance passing the test or just the opposite?
I think the important thing, I would mention 2 things. First of all, NATO launched this operation called Eastern Sentry, kind of to activate its military forces, readiness and preparedness in the eastern flank countries. Important things to notice was that some NATO members sent additional aircraft to Poland to defend its airspace. I mean Denmark, I mean Germany, I mean France, the United Kingdom, Britain has sent additional Typhoon air jets to Poland to protect its airspace. Also, NATO increased patrolling of skies over eastern flanks. And we also witnessed the initiative by the EU Defense Commissioner Andrius Kubilius about a so-called drone wall on the eastern flank of NATO, drone wall. So it's also important. And we should not forget about the whole eastern flank, not just Poland and Baltic states. We're talking about distances from Finland to Bulgaria, because a Russian drone recently, and after Polish incident, entered Romanian airspace for 50 minutes, also quite a long time. Some wreckage of Russian drones were found on the beaches or Black Sea beach of Bulgaria. Also in Latvia, near Ventspils, there was a wreckage found of a Russian drone. So Russia is provoking NATO, Russia is testing NATO, Russia wants to see what kind of reaction will NATO reply with, and so on and so forth. So NATO should be determined to deter any Russian provocations.
So you mentioned the drone wall initiative, a joint effort to create a network of surveillance that would stop these cases from happening. We've also had the Zapad exercises, the Zapad military exercises, where Russia and Belarus joined forces to run those drills. I also mentioned at the very top of this interview the new launching positions for drones that are within the hitting range of Poland. Do you think that Europe, with the steps that it's taking, and the alliance with the steps that it's taking, is actually prepared for what could potentially come from the east, or are we still far behind?
You know, time is running very fast. It the tempo of the time has increased significantly since the beginning of Russian full-scale invasion against Ukraine. Because before, European members of NATO were preparing for some kind of attack or provocation, significant or confrontation with Russia for 2030, within the next 5 years. Now, Russia is, after Russian attempts to test NATO, to see NATO's reaction, NATO Eastern flank countries and EU members and NATO European members should be ready to counter Russian provocation or confrontation with Russia now, already. It's urgent need. They shouldn't be ready within 5 years, by 2030. No. They should be ready now, already. So, and here comes one more player, the elephant in the small room. It's the United States of America, whether the American administration, Trump's administration, is ready to be present significantly on the European continent, to respect this transatlantic alliance, the bond between America and Europe. I think that the recent pledge by President Trump, that he does not foresee any reduction of American troops in Poland, it's a good thing. There are about 10,000 American troops, soldiers on the Polish soil, on the Polish ground. I think that's important statement, that's important commitment. And I think that generally there is no need, it would be irresponsible if America is to reduce its military presence in Europe. I think important fact also that Trump, after some hesitation, he has appointed American general to head European NATO forces on European continent, General Alexis Grinkevich. I think it's important that America at least now stays committed to its obligations to defend Europe against any Russian incursion or aggression.
But if I remember correctly, according to the general that you just mentioned, General Grinkevich, in about 2 years' time, Europe should be expecting a war. On the other hand, you said that Europe is, it should be ready for attack at any given point in time in order to be able to protect itself. And yet, a lot of our experts mentioned that Europe is absolutely not ready. So what kind of a picture does it paint for us in terms of the near future and the security on the continent?
While war is raging in Ukraine, Russia is not ready physically technically, Russia has no strength and capabilities to do a significant provocation or incursion into or test significantly NATO eastern defenses, while war is still going on. But after the war, if some kind of ceasefire is achieved, or peace is achieved, or peace treaty is signed in the future, Russian hands will be free. So, in a way, Russia is now too involved in the war in Ukraine, too busy with Ukraine, and that's why it's doing some kind of this kind of soft provocation against NATO, soft testing. But if war is over in Ukraine, Russia will have a free hand for any possible provocation against European members of NATO. That's the truth. That's the fact.
So do I understand correctly that your statement is that the longer the war in Ukraine takes, the more time Europe and the alliance has to get ready for a possible attack from Russia?
Paradoxically, yes. Russian hands are tied in Ukraine. Russia is busy in Ukraine, especially when Ukrainian strategy over the past several months has been to diminish Russian military capabilities. This precise strike with precision against Russian oil industry, against oil refineries, against oil depots, against oil pumping stations, oil pipelines. The Russian war machine is significantly weakened. Russia has no energy to pump into the war machine, because up to about 30% of Russian oil potential of Russian oil industry has been targeted, has been diminished by Ukrainian drone and missile strikes against Russian oil refineries.
Just before we go, because our time here on the program is sadly coming to an end, we know that President Zelensky is set to meet with Donald Trump at the UN today. We will be reporting here on TVP World on the developments, but what do you think this conversation is going to focus on?
The Trump-Zelensky conversation on the sidelines of the 80th General Assembly at the United Nations will be mainly focused on the next steps. Zelensky will again send a clear message to Trump during one-to-one meeting that Putin is not ready for peace, that Putin is deceiving Trump, that Putin is lying, that Russia has no indication and no inclination to end this war, to sign a peace deal. That Russian demands are unrealistic for Ukraine, that Putin is not ready neither for bilateral meeting with Zelensky, nor for trilateral meeting Zelensky-Putin-Trump. That's one thing, and also Zelensky will say that Ukrainians are ready to fight and are counting on continuing American military support.
Thank you very much. Rostyslav Khotin, Senior Ukraine Editor at Radio Free Europe. Radio Liberty was my guest. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
And so this would be all here on World Talks. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news and features in just a moment.